What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Butterfly Effect Podcast. I'm Liana, and obviously, you see we are somewhere different today. Nice and cozy, great quality aesthetics, right? Probably a great place to eat and drink tequila, if you ask me.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, today I'm joined by my dear friend Carlo.
Hey, guys.
We work at the same place together. We're not going to say where. Obviously, if you know us.
If you know, you know.
Together. If you know, you know. Exactly. Right? Today we're going to get into some of the industry tea, some of what it's like to be a bartender while holding a relationship, all the things.
All the things.
And
all of the things.
If you work in the industry, you know that like on slow nights or just like when you need a breather in the back, you really rely on your coworkers and you say some crazy things. You get to know each other pretty well.
Oh, in the amount of time that we work together, which is like a couple of months consistently.
Honestly, yeah.
I feel like I know you better than some people I've known years.
No, seriously. So we've had some really good talks, and I was like, obviously you have to come on the podcast. So Thank you for moving your schedule around.
That's okay. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We're about to work after this too.
Oh yeah,
That's how dedicated we are.
Yes, we're just workaholics.
You know us.
Yes.
Well, before we get into like the nitty-gritty of the industry, like I really love that stuff and I think we're gonna have a good convo.
I think so.
I want to know a little bit more about you, and I know my audience likes to like know where people come from and a little bit about their like history and their childhood. So can you kind of paint the picture of who is Carlo? Like, where'd you grow up?
Sure.
What was your childhood like?
Yeah, for sure. So, my name is Carlo Fernandez, and I was born in Mexico City, Mexico. Born there, and then almost immediately after being born, moved out of the city to Veracruz, which is a state in Mexico on the Gulf side of things. Spent most of my time in Mexico there until I was about 9.
Wow.
Yeah. So I spent about 9 years of my early life in Mexico, and then my family made the decision that they wanted to move up to the States. We had some family in the state of Minnesota, so they said, you know what, for our kids' sakes, for just a better future for us, we decided to move up to the States. Well, I guess my parents decided.
Yeah.
Moved up to the States. I was back in 2001. In fact, we crossed the border December 31st of 2000, and then we were on the way up to Minnesota New Year's.
You crossed the border December 31st?
Yep.
And then, that's so cool.
So we had Christmas with my grandparents in Mexico City, and from there we went straight up.
You literally started the new year.
Yeah,
on a
like
new
it's
page,
just boom, literally,
chapter.
as new as you can get. New country, you know.
Oh my god. So what was childhood like in Mexico? I mean, obviously childhood is probably similar everywhere around the world, but there's certain things that made it probably different than what I experienced.
Oh, for
so
sure.
what was it like for you?
So it was a really interesting experience, the contrast between something like coming to the States and going to school and being in Mexico and going to school. So in Mexico, at least in Veracruz where I was in Jalapa, which is the capital of Veracruz. It's a fairly large city. We didn't have certain things, like we didn't have school buses. Like that's not a thing in Mexico.
You had no school buses?
Your parents will take you there. Or you got to find your way there.
Or you gotta walk.
You got to walk.
That was my dad too.
Oh man, I'm sure. But it's one of those things, right, where like you always hear the stories of, I had to walk to school. Well, I actually did.
How far?
I wasn't far. My parents would drive me most of the time, and if I had to, walk, it'd be like a few miles. So. It wasn't anything crazy.
A few miles as a 9-year-old.
I mean, oh my goodness. Let me tell you, my mom's told me stories about her childhood, and she grew up in a rural place, and she had to walk miles and miles and miles to get to school, like through
so crazy.
through like thicket and like rivers and stuff like that. Like it was
and
crazy.
You see, we really take that stuff for granted. Like people really had to go through the trenches just to get to school, like we don't even want to get out of bed.
Exactly, we don't even want to be there,
No, that just put a lot in perspective. That's crazy.
It's crazy
but that makes me think, like, if your family felt so safe to just let children walk to school like that, the community must be like a lot safer and like take care of your own in that sense, because just to let your kids walk that far, like people don't even let their kids go in the backyard by themselves nowadays. You know what I mean?
Right. I think it's an interesting mixture of a few things. So I think partly it is that the community is there, and I feel like Americans have this like notion in their head that if you're walking around aimlessly, oh, something's going to happen to you. And maybe if you're white, blonde hair, blue eyed, walking around Mexico, maybe you stand out.
Okay.
Blending in is always a good thing, and so obviously, being Mexican, I blended in just fine.
Yeah. Okay.
But also, like it's partly, like you blend in, you do what you're supposed to do, you know where you're supposed to go and where you're not supposed to go.
Yeah.
And your parents instill that in you really early because you become much more mature. Like it's like hey, like there's no buses. You gotta figure it out. You know who to talk to. You know who not to talk to. You know where to go. You know where not to go.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Just a little bit of a blend of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, and you're the youngest, right?
I am. So I have
how many?
3 of us, 3 boys. My poor mother.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. So my brothers are actually about 9 years older and 8 years older. So there's an 8-year gap between us and a 1-year gap between them.
Did they move with you when you came to Minnesota? So they were in high school.
They were in high school when they moved up. I was still in elementary school.
So that must have been, that's hard for all of you guys in different ways.
Yeah.
So how was it hard, what was that transition like? Coming to the United States and starting over for you?
It was very difficult. So I was 9 at the time, and other than my oldest brother, at the most basic of levels, spoke any English. So there was no English knowledge, we didn't really speak the language.
Only your brother spoke
Only my oldest brother spoke very, very,
not
very...
Not your parents?
Not my parents,
the
nobody.
pressure he probably felt.
Oh, I'm
my
sure.
gosh.
And that's like one of those things where it's like, it's just part of the deal, you just gotta do it. But it's so strange going from like a place where it's always warm. You're on the, you're on the wall. I know, right?
Right. Like I didn't even think about that part.
I always tell people we moved up to Minnesota because of the beaches and palm trees. But no, it was family. We moved up here because it's family. They knew that Minnesota had a fairly good economy. It had a really good education system. It was fairly progressive. You're in the Midwest, so it was kind of nice. But the contrast is really interesting because always warm to moving up in December and seeing snow for the first time ever.
Right.
Like,
even the timing of it.
It was so interesting. And I was like, as a little kid, just imagine like seeing snow for the first time. Like that's so much fun.
Yeah.
Like, you always used to see it in like movies and in like cartoons.
Yeah.
Because imagine that, like as a kid in Mexico, like you never see these things you see in like cartoons because we watch the same American cartoons that you guys used to watch.
Yeah.
Just in Spanish, but like you see all these like things in the U.S. and you're like, it doesn't make sense to me. But then you come here and you like see it and it's really interesting.
You embraced the snow. You thought it was cool.
For about a month and then I hated it.
So you were a real Minnesotan.
Oh, I feel like I took up that portion of the Minnesotan aspect fairly well.
Yeah.
It was really interesting because, it was a whole... You're in a place where you don't know anyone. You don't, other than like your family or your uncle and whoever. You don't know anyone. You can't communicate with anyone other than the people that do speak the language. So school was a challenge because it's like I got an ESL class, but it's like that's one period out of the many periods, and so then they throw me in a class and try to teach me, math concepts or science concepts that kids that speak the language struggle to learn, and then let alone I don't know what you're saying.
That is so hard.
So it was sink or swim.
How did you get through that?
Like a lot of things in life, I'm of them, and I think it stems from that. I'm just of the mentality of you just have to do it. Okay. There is like, is it hard? Is it unfair? Is it whatever? Sure, but you have to do it. You don't have a choice.
Yeah. Your parents instilled that in you?
I think so too, because it was very similar. So, they came to this country. They didn't speak the language. They couldn't drive. So my parents literally did walk in the snow miles to get to work at a factory just to put food on the table for us, And
my gosh.
There's no excuses. I mean, there's no excuses for any of it because it's just like, you can make the excuses all you want. You can say, well, it's not fair that we have to. Well, it's not fair that we don't speak the language. Well, it's not fair. Well, sure, but it's not fair doesn't put food on the table. So... Hold
on, I just need to let that sink in for a second. Because, I think I needed to hear that. I think obviously you should acknowledge when things are tough and challenging.
Sure.
Of course, things could be easier in some facets. Of course, of course. But you're right. At the end of the day, get it done. Like,
right.
sitting here complaining about it, dissecting it, explaining to yourself why this isn't fair. What the heck? What is that changing?
It doesn't do anything for you.
Turn it up, y'all. Turn it up. Rewind it. Let's do it again.
Pull it back now, y'all.
Oh, thank you. No, that was a huge gem. You have no idea.
Well, I think that it's important for people to hear that because I think, like you said, I do think that there is a place and a time to acknowledge that people do struggle, people do have hard days, and then I think you need to live life with grace for yourself. Mm-hmm. I always tell people, have grace for yourself. Let yourself fall off the horse. And if you can't win the day, then okay, you didn't win the day, but win the week.
Yeah.
And if you couldn't win the week, win the month. Do what you can in your control to make what you need to happen. So I just think people do need to hear that.
No.
There's a balance.
No, I appreciate you saying that. I can't even explain it. But, okay, so yeah, you come to Minnesota, and also I want to take a step back, thinking about Minnesota during the time you came. The holidays are over, so the fun, like you said, the fun of the winter, done. Everyone's in hibernation. We're burnt out from the holidays. Yeah. It's gloomy as hell out, and you're in this new area, don't know how to talk to anyone. I can only imagine, I'm sorry, I'd be so depressed. How did you guys stay positive during that initial change? As a family? I
think it was tough because all we had was each other. Mm-hmm. When we came up to the States, an uncle on my mom's side was the one who was like, you can come, you can stay with us, you can... Mm-hmm. And very quickly we found out that it wasn't really what it seemed. He's like, okay, you got to start paying for this. Okay, you got to start helping with this. And my parents just got in here, and so... It got to the point where we were like, you know what? I think you're more of a hindrance in what we're doing here than anything. And so we ended up leaving.
Damn.
And so that was within a few months. And so my parents had to figure out a place to live. They had to figure out, how they were going to make it work. And so they just, through meeting people at work that were also Hispanic, that had been here longer, having those people kind of help them out and take you in.
Yeah.
That's kind of what got them through. And we just had each other, It's really interesting. So when we moved out, we ended up moving into a house in Northeast Minneapolis before Northeast was the bastion of, art and whatever that it is now. Back in early 2000, it was kind of starting to happen, but wasn't the nicest area at that point in time. And so a guy rented us his basement. And when I'm saying a basement, I'm talking about Northeast Minneapolis, 1920s house basement, not a nice finished basement.
So it's not finished. It's cement walls,
cement floors. Cement floors, cement walls, pipes on the ceiling.
That's what I'm living in right now.
Yeah, basically, right?
I'm a basement dweller right now. But wow.
So
okay.
the five of us.
But you're 5 people in there.
5 people in there, 2 rooms, and all we had to our name was what at the time we gotten from charity, and I forgot what the charity was that we got it from, but it was 1 single mattress, 1 radio that dubbed as an alarm clock for entertainment, 4 sets of cutlery, and 4 plates. That was basically all we owned. And from there, we just had to kind of figure it out.
Wow.
So family time was important because you didn't have anything else going on. So parents would get done with work, mom would come home, cook, dinner and get us fed, and then we just hang out for a while and go to sleep and do it all over again. And for us it'd be go to school, figure that out, do your homework. So that was kind of early life until eventually we were able to move out of that basement into a nicer house and into just nicer and nicer places. Until eventually my parents were able to somehow, some way, to this day I still don't know. Of course, the economy was way different back then, but they were able to actually buy a house, live the American dream. Now, obviously, 2008 happened, and so they lost the house eventually. But
that had to be crushing.
It was. There was that was the summit of everything they had worked so hard for years, in a country where they didn't speak the language, where they weren't technically supposed to be in legally, where just everything was working against them. And so that's also a part of the reason why, for me, I think of empathy and sympathy and how those things are important, but how they should be separated, because I, understand people that struggle, that have things in their life that make it harder for them than the average person. But I always tell people, if my parents were able to do all of that, with every handicap in the book thrown their way, then there's always a way or a will or a way. And maybe you won't live in a mansion or, you know, like drive a Lamborghini, but you'll be able to live life.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So how did, like, the responsibilities kind of spread out amongst you all? I'm sorry, I'm just so fascinated by your story. Now we will move on, but I'm like, but like, how did the responsibilities spread out? Like, I'm sure a lot got put on your shoulders as a 9-year-old, and then your brother, I'm thinking about your brother being the oldest, I'm the oldest.
Yeah.
And I know that role and what we play in family dynamics, but like being the only one to speak English.
Yep.
Like, that had to be a lot of pressure in different ways on you guys. And how did you feel that?
So I think it made you grow up really fast.
Totally.
Growing up in kind of a situation where your oldest brother is the one that's essentially like a second father. He's kind of running the household when dad isn't around.
Yeah.
A lot of things on his shoulders, you know. If anything needed to happen, if we needed to go do anything, he was the one that was kind of front and center translating things. And eventually, you know, me and my middle brother, we eventually did start learning more and more English and helping out more and more, but you know, most of that kind of fell on him, and it was difficult, but you know, we all had responsibilities, we all had to do things around the house because my parents weren't always home, and again, you know, like, you know better, you know much better than most other people in the circumstances that you're under, because you know, a kid in high school gets in trouble and maybe the cops get called on them, that's you shouldn't be doing that. For us in our situation, you know, not being in the country legally at the time, it was like, well, if you do something stupid, it's like not just you, but we all get dragged into this, and you know, everything we work for goes away.
And look what happens, like, terrifying things. Right. And it was a different climate back then, but what was that fear like? Like, were you afraid of that being a factor?
I feel like there was fear. It was a childlike fear in the sense that you're afraid of it because your parents told you to be afraid of it, not because you fully understand the weight of the situation. Yes. Right. Yep. But still, I mean, it was something that you had to live with, and so, you know, growing up, going to high school, and you know, wondering like, well, why don't you play sports, or why don't you do this? Well, I mean, any injury, any sort of anything that I would incur could put me in a hospital on a bill that my parents couldn't pay, couldn't get help on, and then people start asking questions, you know.
Is that why you didn't, that's why you didn't play?
That was a big part of it. It was a big part of it, and also, you know, at some point after, you know, school, I had to go to work to help around the house, so there was no time for sports.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We're not worthy of your presence.
Oh, whatever. I just think that, again, like, I think that is like just like the human experience, though. Is like we're all like molded and shaped by what was around us, right?
That's true.
And so like I grew up really quickly. I grew up really fast, and then, you know, my fiance, you know, grew up in a very different environment. And so, can I sit here and have the same expectations from her and everything that I have? Well, no, that would be unfair because she lived a completely different life growing up.
Yeah.
So that would be unfair for me to have those expectations, you know.
And I guess I'm just sitting here listening to you speak about your experience, and like you in no way do it in a way where you're like you want pity from anyone. And I'm not saying you ever would. I'm just saying you don't speak about it in a way as that. You speak it like this was just my experience. I learned from it. I grew from it. It doesn't hold me back. Like, you just look at it in such a positive way where I'm going to be honest, sometimes, and you people who are watching all these episodes, you can look back and see, like, sometimes I think I do victimize myself in a way because I have had a hard life. Sure. And I struggle with accepting it sometimes, and then, like, talking about it, and then when I talk about it, I feel bad about it. And it's like, I have weird feelings around it, but it's like, it's made me who I am. It's made me independent. It has made me a go-getter. It's made me all these great things, and I want to come to a place where you are. Like, you just seem like you're so at peace with it, and like it is what it is. You move forward, and it made you stronger. Like, I can see that in you. I don't necessarily feel that in myself, so I want to try to get more like you. Like, that's why I'm really taking in your story, and my story was not your story.
Sure, yeah.
It was different experiences, but yeah, it's good to hear you have that kind of outlook. For
sure, and I mean, obviously, it took time.
Yeah.
It took time and coming to terms with it and accepting all those things. You know, I'm 33 now. I was certainly a different person when I was in my mid-20s or, even late 20s.
How different?
I was very different. I feel like I was very similar in a lot of ways, but I was a lot more rambunctious.
Okay.
I feel like once my situation got worked out a little bit more, and I wasn't so afraid of, like all the other things around, like, having to, worry about getting deported or anything, then I was able to finally be a kid in a sense. Finally I was able to go out and do all the stupid things that, like I couldn't do because of fear of those things.
Yeah.
Obviously within reason. So I had all my fun. I did all my stupid things in my early 20s.
When did you get your citizenship?
So technically I don't have my citizenship. I'm a DACA recipient. So
Okay.
I have a work permit, and I can renew it every, so often, and, just kind of, I'm able to live in this country and work is essentially what it is. But that happened when President Obama enacted the DACA Act. So that was back in it was after I graduated, so 2010, 12ish, something like that.
That sounds very familiar.
And so when that happened, that's when I was able to kind of, I can actually start working like legally and have better jobs than just like factory jobs.
Yeah.
My first job was through a temp agency, and we were making like $8.27 an hour or something like that.
Wow.
And man, I was so proud when I was like, yes,
baller!
My paycheck is $300. Woo, for a week's worth of work. Ooh, I was swimming in it back then.
But life was cheaper too. That $300 went far.
It did. That is true.
What was that feeling like when you like got approved for DACA?
DACA, yeah.
DACA.
It was a weight off of the biggest weight you can possibly imagine off your shoulders. Because by the time I was in my early 20s, I understood the severity of the situation a lot more than when I was a kid. It wasn't a kid fear anymore. It was a legit fear where, like, I have built a life here.
Exactly.
For all intents and purposes, I am an American at this point, and so there's a lot more that comes with that if something does happen. And so that was huge for me, just being able to work properly, not having to hide or not having to be afraid.
I can't imagine.
It was. But again, just like everything else in my life that was a struggle, it was something that made me who I am. And so I would never go back and change anything in my life. I would never go back and change even the bad things in my life because they shaped who I am now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My last thing I'll ask around this is, like, are you, and we can cut this part out, but I would feel weird not asking it given the state of where we're in. Like, do you have any fears around what's going on politically right now?
No.
Okay. That's good.
I mean,
good.
like,
I'm glad.
There's always caution.
Yeah.
Right? I think fear is the enemy of all humanity in the sense that fear makes you not do things because you're afraid. Fear makes you hesitate on things that could be good. Fear makes you not enjoy every day you wake up. And people forget that every day that you wake up, it's a gift because you're never promised anything tomorrow or anything. And so every day you wake up, just take it one day at a time. Are there things that are out there politically that, could be, like scary to some people? And yes, and I can understand why. But the only thing that you can do is what you can control. I can't control what happens with politicians, and I can't control what they do or don't do. And so the best thing I can do is be the best human being that I can around the people that I am currently at. And
you do.
Oh, you're
and
so
you are.
And if something happens, then we cross that bridge when we get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for speaking on that, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sharing your life and sharing, like, being vulnerable enough to share your story. Like, that, I really, like, this, what was it, only 20 minutes?
Yeah.
That might have been, like, the most, I don't even, like, the light bulb moment for me. Like, are you guys listening to this guy? But okay, so you get approved to start working. How do you find your way into the service industry?
Oh, my
because
goodness.
Before he gets into his starting, like, this man has been, he is the pinnacle of hospitality. This man has done it all. From hotel, bartending, serving, banquets, like, all of the things Carlo has done. So how did you get your start?
So funny enough, my oldest brother was seeing a girl around the time that I had gotten my DACA card because I was like, well, what do I do with this now? What do I do with this newfound power? And so he was dating this girl at the time, and she was actually the assistant general manager of a small hotel out in Bloomington. And so she needed help at the front desk. And so she's like, well, have him come and interview and, we'll see what we can do. And so my hospitality career started at the front desk of a hotel.
Okay.
I was fairly young, knew nothing about it. I had never done a service job. I'd only worked factories. And so I always tell people, funny enough, that if I right now was my own boss back then, I would fire myself.
Really?
Yes.
Because you're like one of the hardest workers I know.
Oh my goodness. And it wasn't even that I wasn't really working hard. It was the way that I just interacted with people. The way that I interact with people now is I think where I wanted to be in life. I think I'm right where I need to be with that facet of my life. But back then, I was a lot more or less refined. And so the things that I can get away with now, I couldn't get away with then.
What's an example? So,
like, cracking jokes with guests at the bar is like a thing, right? But you always walk that fine line of you always read the crowd, you read the room,
yes.
You read everything, But with, at the front desk, I was just shooting from the hip. Like, someone would be like, oh, do you guys have elevators? And my response was like, no, we actually have a rope that you climb up the side of the building. And, like, I thought that it was the funniest thing.
Yeah.
But, like, to a guest that probably got off a plane not that long ago that just wants to go up to their room. Yeah, they're like,
yeah.
So there's that, and then there's those things that you just don't know. Like, starting a check-in, and then it was my time to clock out, and I'm just like, perfect, well, John's here, and John will finish this check-in. And it's just like, what?
Like, it says 5 p.m. on my schedule.
Yep, it says 5 p.m. on my schedule, so
very Gen Z of
time
you.
to go. I know. Before Gen Z was even around.
You started it.
I know. Trendsetter here.
So from hotel you go to...
I kept moving up in front desk, so I left there and moved up to a nicer hotel and started doing what's called a night audit. So a night audit is the overnight shift at a hotel front desk where you do, you check people in that come in and stuff. But you're doing a lot of like the end of day stuff. You're pulling reports, you're putting it where they need to go, you're pulling all the micro things for the restaurant so that all of the accounting stuff can get done and all that. So you're doing a lot of those functions. And so I did that 2 nights a week, which is on the weekend, and then 3 days out of the week I was just doing regular front desk. From there, I left that hotel and went to another hotel and got promoted to front desk supervisor. That was probably one of the scariest moments of my life because I was still fairly young. I was 23-ish, I think.
Yeah.
And so here comes this, hotshot 23-year-old kid who's had maybe 2 years of hotel experience, coming into another hotel chain where I don't know the system. I don't know how they do it. It's a much bigger hotel than every hotel I've ever worked at. And I have to tell these people that are older than me, that have been here longer than me, how to do their job.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But I think that is kind of where I started to grow, where my growth happened. I, got a lot more comfortable with who I was. I got a lot more comfortable with giving people direction, learning how to give direction to different people, because you have to treat people differently according to where they're at and how they react to things. And then I had a really great manager at the time who taught me a lot about my hospitality language, about my hospitality presence. And so I learned a lot from him in my mannerisms. Now, he was great with guests, and he was fantastic at what he did, and he taught me a lot. But that man was unhinged a little bit.
You needed to reel it in a bit?
Oh, so in the back end of things, yeah. He would tell me, he'd be talking with a guest about, check out this place, and this place is great, and if you're looking for this type of food right over here, and oh my God, we love you, you're so great. Then we'd go in the back office, and he'd be like, so I went to the saloon last night and got banged in the butt by a dude, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, all right, so we're really going in deep here, right?
Banged in the butt.
It's crazy. I like, the bee, bang in the butt.
Bee in the bee.
Bee
I
the
like
bee.
that.
He got beat in the bee.
Beat in the bee. Beat in the bee.
So, yeah, that was kind of where I started my growth. From there, I just moved up until eventually I, reached kind of the pinnacle of the front desk. And at that point in time, I thought hotels was like the thing. Like, I wanted to stay in a hotel, and I eventually wanted to be a general manager. So, our boss, who was the director of the front office at that hotel, moved to another hotel, and he's like, hey, I'm looking for a manager over here. So he pulled me, and we just kept moving to different hotels and growing. And he's like, hey, eventually you're going to need to learn housekeeping and other facets of the hotel, because you can't just be a GM and just know one thing. So he convinced me to take a job at another hotel as an assistant housekeeping manager, even though I had never cleaned a room in my life, and that was very interesting, because again, now I'm walking just like that first time. I'm moving into a completely different environment where I've never cleaned a room. I'm expected to inspect these rooms and tell these housekeepers how to do their job. And, of course, housekeepers are a completely different ballgame from front desk people.
Okay.
Front desk people are very, they're usually younger kids.
Are they like the servers at the
They're more
restaurant?
they're more service forward, right? Housekeepers, that's a different, you're getting dirty, you're getting in there, and so, you've done this for years. So it's a lot harder for some snot-nosed kid to come in and just tell you how to properly vacuum that room.
I would probably love that.
Yep. And most of my housekeepers were Liberian, so then there was the cultural thing.
people!
Yeah, people soup! Yeah. I love it, so if you bring it over here.
Some.
Yes! I love that. But so then you have the, cultural, division of, not division, but just not being as in-depth in that culture and them not being as in-depth in mine. How I communicate and all that. But that again helped me grow, because that's where I really learned that there are definitely different strokes for different folks. Mm-hmm. And that's where I learned that, I don't care what anybody says. In any hotel, the hardest working people are the people cleaning rooms. So when you go to a hotel and you doing whatever you're doing at that hotel, I don't care what you do. Be respectful of those people and leave that room in a decent, don't break anything, don't throw things around. That's time that they have to spend picking up after you. And yes, it's their job, but
common decency.
Exactly, right? So that's just a little tidbit of that.
I love that. Turn it up. Rewind it. Listen to that again.
So at that point in time, that's when I was like, I need a little money on the side. And so someone was like, oh, well, why don't you get into banquets? You can do it on call, so you don't have to do it like a set schedule. And it's a lot of money. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I get into this? So got through some people and started working it on the side. Kept up my career in hospitality as a housekeeping manager. And eventually I took over as an executive housekeeper for another hotel. And at that point in time, I had been in that hotel game for years. Yep. I'd been doing it for a while, and I was just kind of like, is this really what I want? Is this really what I, And one of the places I was doing banquets at the time was out in Wayzata, and they actually needed help in the restaurant. And so they were like, do you want to do that? And I'm like, sure. They were like, we'll show you the ropes on how to start to bartend behind a full-service bar. So that's kind of where that journey began, and I really fell in love with that because it allowed me to be creative, it allowed me to talk to people and give service, but also do more than just give service.
Yeah.
And so I kept that on the side for a long time until eventually I made the decision to move into that full-time. So that's how I ended up.
I heard the money good over there.
And
not bad.
We've talked about this, and I think I've said this to you, so here's another little tidbit for everybody out there. This works great for some people. They'll tell you, find something you love doing for a living and you'll never work a day in your life. And I think that does work for some people. I'm the kind of person where, for me, I find the things that I'm really good at, that I make a lot of money on, and I do that for a living, and I keep the things I love at home.
I like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Because on one of my last solo episodes, I'm like, I just want to kiki and be happy in the sun. I don't want to work 40 hours a week. And that did get misinterpreted because I wasn't very clear. Mm-hmm. I am a hard worker. I don't mind working. I don't if it's going to make me money and it's going to put me closer to my dreams, I don't mind working. But I want to do something that isn't like so painful for me. Like serving is not... Like, I could do that.
Right.
I could do that 7 days a week if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Like, it's finding things that don't feel so strenuous is, I guess, what I mean. And what we're good at. And it's profitable. Yeah.
It is profitable. And it's great. And if... the thing about it is that people that aren't in that industry think, well, it must be easy because you make a lot of money. But you have to be good at what you do.
Thank you.
You have to be good at what you do to make the money. Because it's always based on how other people feel and what they want to do for you. And what you do for them is what affects that. And so, there's a reason why every single server makes different amounts or averages. It's because it's tied to where they're at as far as how good they are at their job.
You're like controlling their experience, like you're helping guide it.
You are.
And you can't control every aspect. You can't control if they like their drink. You can't control if their food comes out the way they want it, but you can control the reaction to it.
Right.
And like how you can recover from it and make sure they still have a good experience. And so like that is a skill that not everybody has. So
100%.
I think if you have it, you have it, and you can be very successful in this business, and the lifestyle is really fun and like you can live a different type of life than the 9-to-5 people, which is okay too if it's for you. I think this life is for me.
Right. Yeah. No, I could never be stuck in an office working a 9-to-5.
Meetings.
That's just not for me.
I can never go back. I tried it. Did you ever try that? Like a 9-to-5
one? I was with Northwestern Mutual for a while.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, did that for a while. And, you know, I will say this. The amount of money that I made from them was not what I got out of it. What I got out of it was the knowledge of how to handle my own money. That's important.
Do you have any tips for people in the industry?
Oh my goodness. It comes in so fast and so hard when you get those paychecks, and you get that big paycheck and you just want to go out and you want to, you know, go to your favorite bar and tip your favorite bartender, Carlo. Do that. That's great. But then put some of that money aside and be really smart with how and where you put those things. Educate yourself. Educate yourself on how money works and where money comes in, where money comes out, how taxes work. Educate yourself on what grows best and more steady. Educate yourself on how money grows in the stock market. All of those things are important because you need to build for the future, because at some point people don't realize that when you retire, there is no more money coming in. It's whatever you have built through the years. And so if you want to spend all your money now, then you're going to be in trouble later in life.
Totally. And like that's what's so hard, because we have months where we are making bank. We all know that. People in the industry, you know that. You make so much money, and like it is tempting to go on an extra trip because I'll just pick up an extra shift.
Sure.
But then there's months where your paychecks are $400 a week. Like it's scary, like very, very hard, and like that's real, and that's not something that is probably going to ever change. There's always going to be slow periods. So like, how have you found that balance, just putting extra money aside to help cushion those? Yeah, that is something that I have to learn, because I did not do well at that my first time around.
Yeah, I always tell people set aside an emergency fund for yourself, and it's a 6-month emergency fund. The reason I say that is because short-term disability takes about 6 months before it kicks in and you get anything from anybody. So 6 months you need to make sure you can pay every bill that is vital in your life without any income coming in your life. So whatever your rent, food, and the things that you need to do to get around, set 6 months worth of that aside so that you don't have to depend on anybody for 6 months before short-term, long-term disability kicks in or any sort of other income comes in after you get injured or something happens to you.
Right.
You know, just having that cushion, having that safety net just feels so nice. Because no matter what happens, you know, you always have something set kind of aside.
Yes, and I'm building my safety net right now. It feels good. Feels good. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Okay, so we are almost done. You're coming back on. I've already decided.
We need more time.
We do. This might have to be like a monthly
two-parter.
special. Yeah. But now let's get into the little funny stuff about the industry, because obviously you went from banquets to bartending, and that, I'm sure, is a whole different beast.
Oh, yeah.
Because the women... first of all, let me just say, this guy, he really knows how to put on the charm.
Oh my goodness.
With the ladies. He'll unbutton his top button, he'll lean in, he'll spray his cologne a little bit. Like, this guy knows how to work it.
It's all part of the game, baby.
It is. So how did you get, like, what would you say was the biggest change from banquets to becoming like a bartender?
It's a very different ballgame, because banquet bartending, and I did both serving and bartending in banquets, but specifically banquet bartending, it's a satellite bar, which is one of those bars that like moves, it's on wheels, and so you're more limited on what you have. You have one vodka, one rum, one tequila, one of everything. You don't really have all the other things, all the aperitifs, all the liqueurs, all the other fancy things to make cocktails. So really you can make well drinks. You can make like a this and a that, maybe an old fashioned if you have some, you know, simple syrup or some demerara syrup or whatever. And then you set your bar where it needs to go, where the contract tells you it needs to be for the event. And then people walk up to your bar, they order, they pay, or if it's hosted, they just get their drinks, and they're out. It's a line. and you're just getting people through a line.
Revolving door.
Right?
Yep.
Whereas when you are at a bar, people walk up. People have options. People have a ton of options. And people have a ton of preferences. And so they can, well, what about this? And what's this? And can I sub this for that? And can I do this and that? What would you say is this? And, and so you're working them through a lot more things. And it's the same with serving on the banquet side of things. Mm-hmm. Banquet serving is, if you've ever been to a wedding, it's the easiest way for me to explain it. They'll RSVP and they'll say, okay, here's the 3 food options. Veggie, chicken, or steak, whatever, and you pick. And when you get there, you sit down, you get your food put in front of you, you eat. You don't have, your server doesn't ask you, well, how would you like your steak? They all come out the same. It's a mass thing because you're doing events for 300, 400, 500 people.
Yeah.
Sometimes 1,000.
Woo!
So it does depend. And so, it's a lot more about the refinement of it. You're setting that table. You're doing a lot of the work on the front end. You're setting that table beautifully. You're setting the decoration beautifully. You're making sure that everything is polished and nice and pretty. And then you put food in front of people. You clear it. Then you put their second course down, and then you clear it. There's really not a ton of time for conversation in that world. And because gratuity is already included in that world, it's in the contract. You don't have to wait for them to see how much they're going to tip you. So your work is already your income's already secured. Whereas in our world, when you're serving, you have to, well, how would you like to cook? And they like to substitute this and that, and you have to keep checking on them. Banquets is a little bit different. So I would say that that's the biggest difference between those two worlds.
You have to really schmooze and work it for the tip.
You do. You work a lot harder for the tips in our world here in restaurant world.
You were already naming some of the things that gave me icks from working in the industry. Mm-hmm. There are not many, but there's some. What are some of your bartending icks that if someone says this, someone asks this, or those things that you started to pick up over time, you're just oh, here we go.
Okay, so here are some of them, and take these things with a grain of salt because I'm a bartender and I'm behind this bar. You get it and you enjoy it, and that's fantastic, and that's what I'm here for, ultimately. Ultimately, we're here to serve you. We're here to make sure. Just know that I'll just be a little less happy as I'm serving you when these things happen, right? If you sit down at my bar and you say, well, what do you like? Well, I mean, I don't know. I like a ton of things that you probably don't like. I like sotol, I like mezcal, and most people don't. If you ask me, well, what's good here? Well, I don't know. What do you think would be good here? Because again, what do you like? Do you like something more fruit forward? Do you like something more spirit forward? Do you like something sweeter? Do you like something more, what do you like? So I'll always cut in and just be like, what do you usually drink? Or is there something you really dislike, right?
See, that is an experienced bartender. You're like, let me guide this conversation in a way that I can be productive because we could just sit here all day.
Exactly. So you ask the questions that get them there quicker. So that's one of them.
Take notes.
If you look at a menu and you're like, okay, these are the specialty drinks for this particular restaurant, and you say to a bartender, oh, can I do this drink but then sub the gin out for vodka? Here's the thing. Most places are pre-batching a lot of those components because it is so labor and time intensive to build every single cocktail from scratch that you would be waiting 30 minutes for your cocktail if we had to build every single cocktail from scratch. Mm-hmm. So most of these components are already batched. So what you're asking us to do is to disregard the batch that we already have made, to go find all the ingredients that we usually don't have from the back, to go build this cocktail just for you.
Just for you.
Just for you. And I'm not telling you not to do, like I said, I'm not telling you not to do that. If you're really dead set on doing that, that's fine. Just know that we are doing an extra service for you, and that should come with an extra little bit of love for us. Mm-hmm.
I agree. And also, can you kind of explain what batching is? Because I think some people who are not in the industry, they hear that, and when I tell guests, they're like, batch. They think we're getting it out of a bottle, a store-bought batch.
Right. No. So I do most of the batching at where we work. Mm-hmm. What batching means is that you're putting all of the components that are shelf stable, all of your liquors, all of your aperitifs, all of your syrups, all of your bitters into a large container, and you build it according to the specs that you have. So you know that this is going to be what one drink is like, and you just basically scale it way, way up. You put all of those components together, you mix them together, and then the components that aren't shelf stable, like citrus or cream or anything that, can't be sitting for too long. That gets put on as we're making the drink. So I'll grab my batch bottle of this, and then I'll pour this much because I know that it needs that much, and then I'll put 0.75 ounces of lime or 0.7 ounces of grapefruit juice, whatever those components are, and then I'll shake the drink. So that's what a batch is. It doesn't mean that we bought it from a store or that we got it or that it's low quality. We use high quality, ingredients and things to make all of our batches, but then we just store them for ease. It's kind of like meal prepping. If you meal prep and you make all of the work on the front end and you just have to throw it in the oven for this long and everything's already in there, it's kind of like that.
And he's still doing all the steps, still making the cocktail fresh for you. Like, there's no steps being skipped, so, yeah.
No.
But, what are some other icks?
Know that your bartender is being nice to you because it's part of our job. It does not mean that we're interested in you. It does not mean that we want to go home with you. And I've told Liana this before. The amount of times where people have been like, well, what are you doing after? And I'm like, I'm going home. I'm going home. I'm going to be here for another 2 hours cleaning up after you. And then I'm going home. And let me be real. If you've ever worked in the industry, you know this. If I've had a long shift and it's on a Saturday, you don't want anything of what's under here after that, okay? You don't.
Maybe they do.
Maybe they do.
Don't yuck someone's yum.
I'm not going to yuck someone's yum, but if that's what you're into, that's cool. That's not what I'm into.
Have you ever, because right now, as you see, with this fine ring around his neck, is that even related?
It's not. But,
but we can make
But we can make it, right? We can make it the lore.
Carlo is a engaged man.
I am.
So, his days of getting a little promiscuous at the bar are over. Let me set that here. We are a respectful space, okay? You know I don't play about that shit.
We do.
But back in the day, my boy was getting down.
Yep.
So what we're like, how, because women are ruthless at the bar.
They are.
Like, I think I always have that mindset. Of course, I'm a woman, so, like, I see that. So I see the men and, like, how they are when they drink and all the things. Women be throwing it out at you, too.
Oh, yeah.
So what are some, like, crazy stories that have happened?
I just think that it's really interesting because when you have like a good-looking young woman out and about, or even like just like a young, good-looking woman in general, or almost any woman, any sort of woman out there, out and about, right? And they've had a few drinks. You let your guard down. You're a little bit more loose, and you think, okay, well, this bartender is smiling at me. He's being nice to me. And so you're getting all the signals in your head, and your guard is down. You've had a few drinks. You're not thinking straight, and so you're throwing it out there. And I've had a lot of those experiences where women are like, oh, like, what are you doing? Leave me their number and stuff like that. And it's just, number one, I'm trapped. I'm behind this bar, and I can't go anywhere, and I can't stop being nice to you. And so you're putting me in a very awkward situation. So, look, think of us bartenders like in some sense like a stripper.
Yes.
You can have fun with us. You can flirt with us. You can laugh. You can have a grand old time while you're having a drink with us, and we'll respond as long as you treat us well. Then I will happily smile and tell jokes and do all of those things for you. Just know that there is always that boundary that you don't cross. You do not cross it. But back in the day,
he said, that all being said,
the amount of
current wise Carlo,
right. I've gotten, most of the bars I worked at are in hotels. So I've gotten key cards, I've gotten numbers, I've gotten, all kinds of things, and, and it just happens. It happens in this industry, it happens in this world. Even if you don't want it to happen, it'll happen. Certainly I've had fun in my younger days. And even at the front desk.
What's the boldest way someone has shot their shot with you?
Oh my God, they just straight up said, I'd love to suck your cock. And I'm like, that's fairly forward, lady.
And you're like shaking your... Oh!
Yeah, and I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
How did you respond?
That was a no for me, dog. I turned into Randy Jackson. I was like,
said, that's a little too far.
That's just like, if you're saying this to someone and that's one of the first things that comes out of your mouth,
There might,
I don't know.
But that's not your first time.
That's not the first time that this has happened. And
she said cock.
Yeah.
Yeah, whoever's saying cock. is like...
Maybe she watched too much porn. I don't know.
I've never in my life said that seriously. Like, no.
I don't think... I mean, again, some people are out there.
Respect.
Hey.
Any other ones that are... Take second place? Any other top contenders?
I just think there was a time when... Again, being very nice and fun. And again, if you treat me well, we're going to have fun. But never cross that boundary.
Yeah.
But then, you know, after going out with some other coworkers for drinks after and finding this guest at this place that we were going, a completely different place, a completely different restaurant. And then them coming up to me and like, oh, putting their hands all over me and like touching me. And I'm just like, okay, I'm off the clock and you're not tipping me here.
For real.
So hands off. Hands off.
That's a lot. No, working in this specific place with you, there's times I get hit on, but it's not anything comparable to like at my other place that I work.
Yeah.
We're also more in with the crowd.
Yeah.
But that has opened my eyes so much. Like being a bottle service girl, like I'm smart. I can understand all the scenarios that play out without having to experience it, but now experiencing it, my eyes have been opened so much of like how creepy people can get with a little Casamigos in their system. It's crazy. They're so touchy.
Yeah.
And like, oh my gosh, like the boundaries, they go out the window.
They're out the window. They think there's a weird thing that happens to people that they think because if they're paying for your service, because if they're paying for you serving them, that they just have the free will to just do whatever they please.
That they own you.
Right, and that's not how it works. There's a saying in hospitality, and I believe it's the Ritz-Carlton that says this, but we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. So we ourselves are professionals. We will have fun. We will make your experience fun, but always just be respectful. Be respectful of us. Be patient with us. We're not here to antagonize you. We're not here to make your experience bad. We're doing our best, and sometimes we're human too, and we're not doing our best.
Right.
So just bear with us. Be kind. Be nice. Be respectful. I think that's super important.
Yes, I love that. My final question of this episode, because he will be back, is, so being a bartender, having a serious relationship, there is a lot of like stereotypes about bartenders and not being faithful, because obviously the temptation is out there.
Sure.
The environment is not conducive of you like staying away from temptation.
Sure.
There's alcohol, there's beautiful women, you know. And so, I feel like bartenders do get that rep that they could maybe not be the most faithful people.
Sure.
I'm sure you've heard that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How have you and your fiance, like, made a boundary? Like, how have you guys come to the same page on having, like, obviously you have to flirt. It's part of your job.
Yep,
and
for sure.
And it sounds like she's on board with that. But, like, what conversations around, like, limits and boundaries have you had and to make this relationship for you successful?
Yeah, I think just, like, with any relationship and with anything like that, just in general, right? The most important thing to establish in a relationship are two things. It's respect and trust, and I guess three. Respect, trust, and then boundaries. So, obviously, I respect you. What does that mean to you? And what does that mean to me? Trust, hey, that if I'm, not back home by the time I'm usually home, it's probably because it was a later shift. And like you can't, you just can't know when I'm going to be getting done or when things are going to get moved around. And the last thing is boundaries, right? So if a guest is here all the time, they're one of my regulars, and I give them a hug, like that's fine. But like now, of course, if a guest comes in and they give me a hug and they're like smelling my hair and caressing my back and kissing my cheek, that's a little bit different. And they will, right? And you have to put a stop to those things, right? Set those boundaries. I think Dave Chappelle had this quote once because someone said something about a joke that he made about his wife. And he says, oh, it's fine. Like she lives and breathes this shit. And in fact, she spends it. So that is also fairly true with my fiance,
This is for us, baby.
This is for us, baby, like, and when we worked together at the last place we worked together, she works at a front desk of a hotel, and from the front desk of that hotel, you can see the bar. And so she's seen me before. She's seen me bartending. She's seen me bartending, and of course she'll always be like, "So who was that?" And I was like, "Oh, it was a guest."
Right.
And she tipped me $30, on a $10 tab.
Yes,
you're welcome. That means we're going to go get dinner at Lolo's tonight, baby.
Hell yeah! But if I was at the front desk and you're at the bar and I could see you in action, I'm like, it would be very distracting.
It's not for everybody, and I will say that.
You don't think is there any healthy level of jealousy that happens within the relationship?
I think for me, like, I always explain it to people this way. Like, when I see, if my significant other is ever talking with someone and I get any sort of jealous feelings or anything like that, it's not because I think that she is doing something wrong. It's because I have full trust in my fiance. Mm-hmm. But I know that I don't know what the other person is thinking. Mm-hmm. So the jealousy doesn't come from me towards her in our relationship. It comes from, well, it's more of like, hey, what's that person planning? What's that person up to? Mm-hmm. And again, because that should be the healthiest level of jealousy. You always want to make sure, that you're setting those boundaries so that jealousy doesn't become a thing between the two people in the relationship, because that can be very toxic. Again, like, hey, that I hug my friends of, the opposite sex, and are you okay with that? That's been established early on. Mm-hmm. Like, I give my coworkers hugs. I give my good friends who are female hugs. You have to be okay with that, because that's who I am. Mm-hmm. That's what I do, and some of these people have been here before you.
It's true.
And you're coming into my world, just like I'm coming into yours, and the expectation shouldn't be that I tell you all these things you have to change,
True.
It's the same thing, but you just have to set those boundaries and be respectful. Now, if you're, again, same thing as with the guest thing. If I'm hugging, my coworker, and then all of a sudden I pick her up and I start spinning her around.
Right.
Okay, now we have a conversation, right?
The pickup hug is crazy.
Right. But, again, like, just knowing where you're at, knowing where your significant other is at is important. But
I agree. And so I'm having so many questions now come in that I'm going to have to save for episode 2.
Okay.
Tune in. Well, on the next episode, we're going to dive into how you knew she was the one.
Oh, boy.
Because I always wonder that, like, how do you know she's the one? Don't say anything. Mm-hmm. But, like, how do you know? What is that moment is it a moment? Is it gradual over time? Like, those are the questions we're going to be digging into in the next episode. But thank you so much. Like, this episode was amazing.
Yeah. I'm super happy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's make it happen.
Yeah!